Chapter 1295, Boy or Girl. If it continued in this way, would Feng Ruching be fine? Suyi frowned as her gaze fell on Feng Ruching's lower abdomen. I'm not sure. Feng Ruching lowered her eyes to her abdomen. Maybe the child loves to eat? I always feel like the food I eat is gone so quickly. Then I'll be hungry again. Nailin Yin subconsciously followed Feng Ruching's gaze as she looked at her abdomen too. What kind of monster was growing inside her daughter's belly? Was that why her daughter ate so well? But no matter what, it was her daughter's child, her grandchild, and she could accept whatever monster it was. Let's go. Don't disturb Qing'er's rest. Suyi smiled stunningly. Perhaps it was because she was about to become a grandmother that she felt extremely happy, and the smile on her lips could not be wiped off. These people did not bother Feng Ruching anymore, and even closed the door after walking out of the room. The moment the door closed, 2 flashes of light appeared, and then she saw little Qing Han and Fu Chun in front of her. Little Qing Han's mouth was filled with spirit herbs, and her large eyes were bright and so starry, cute and innocent. She had just wanted to pounce on Feng Ruching, but Fu Chun quickly blocked her. Fu Chun pulled little Qing Han's clothes and said helplessly, "Qing Han, mother is pregnant. You can't be like before. You will hurt the child." Oh, little Qing Han stopped. She took another spirit ginseng out of nowhere and bit it like a little rabbit. "Mother, do you really have a little sister? Why does she eat more than me?" Feng Ruching raised her hand and pulled little Qing Han into her arms. "How do you know it's a little sister?" "I don't know, but I always thought it would be a little sister. Maybe because I like a little sister more?" "Mother, I will work hard to eat the spirit herbs. The more I eat, the stronger I will be, and then I will be able to protect my little sister." Little Qing Han's voice was so soft that it made Feng Ruching's heart melt. "Good. Mother, I'll raise the little sister for you, all right? I can protect her, and I can take her out to play." Feng Ruching pinched little Qing Han's small nose and gently said, "Well, you're not allowed to take her to set fires or eat people." Little Qing Han was a bit disappointed and left her mouth open. "All right." Feng Ruching frowned as she saw little Qing Han's expression. Me for extra chapters. This girl, was she really planning to take her child out to kill and burn? It seems so. She had to watch little Qing Han more. She must correct Qing Han's habit of eating people as she wished. What if she got a stomachache? At a glance, Fu Chun could see what was on Feng Ruching's mind. "I will keep an eye on them for you." Compared to little Qing Han, Feng Ruching was a lot more at ease with Fu Chun. She responded, "Good. I'll leave these 2 children to you from now on." At this moment, Feng Ruching did not expect that a few years from now, she would definitely regret the decision that she had made today. Even though Fu Chun was matured, he had always loved Qing Han deeply. And when it came to his future little sister, he was even more indulgent, letting him watch over these 2. It was weird if he could manage that. "Fu Chun, Qing Han, you guys go and check when Nancian will be back." Feng Ruching sighed. They had just been apart for more than a few days, but she was already starting to miss him again. Fangzhou mainland had been destroyed, so Nancian should be back soon. "All right." Fu Chun took Qing Han's small hand and smiled. "Qing Han, let's go and see if father is back." Chapter 1296. Someone from the Divine Herb sect came. Nancian had not returned yet, but the Mu family had welcomed a group of uninvited guests. In Mu Manor's living room, the old Master Mu was sitting upright. He held a cup of tea in his hand, gently sipping it before he carefully placed the cup on the table and looked at the visitors expressionlessly. "Even if your Divine Herb sect sent people here, the one you should be looking for is Gu Shi. He is the chief of Tianshan Manor. Why did you come to Mu Manor?" 2 young men in white robes were sitting in front of the old Master Mu. A shallow smile appeared on their lips as they slowly stood up. "Some people have been sent to Gu Manor. The gathering of the 3 great forces will be held after a few days, and at that time, I hope the Mu family can attend that gathering. This is an order from our Manor Lady." 1-inch Manor Lady? The old Master Mu frowned abruptly and sneered. "I did hear that the Divine Herb sect only has a Manor Master. Your so-called Manor Lady. Could it be that your master has an illegitimate daughter out there?" The old Master Mu's words were extremely insulting, causing the 2 young men's faces to darken as they stared at him somewhat gloomily. "Master Mu, don't speak too much. Our manor lady. I'm sure you know her. She is the Qin family's lady, Qin Fair, who once has been bullied by your Mu family. Fortunately, our manor master took her in, so she has survived. The old master Mu sneered. Oh, so your master illegitimate daughter is Qin Fair. TFASK, no wonder Qin Li never treated her as his daughter and was even willing to give her to someone else. It turns out that she's not even Qin Li's own daughter. If Qin Li or the master of the Divine Herb sect were present, they would definitely be vomiting blood and faint from anger on the spot from hearing this. The two young men were already so angry as they stared at the old master move furiously. Our manor master has also mentioned the woman who has insulted the manor lady. Oh, I believe she is called Feng Ruching. Make sure she comes and participates in this gathering as well. The Divine Herb sex man took out the invitation and slammed it on the table. This time, not only the Divine Herb sect and Deity's Gate will be there, but also some other forces are included in the invitation list. So I'm sure your Mu family will not be afraid to come to this gathering. Farewell. The young man looked at the old master Mu coldly before he turned and left. As he left, he just happened to run into Feng Ruching. Me for extra chapters. The young woman's beautiful face made the young man stop for a while, but he still left without lifting his head. Old Master. Feng Ruching slowly walked in toward the old Master Mu. What is the Divine Herb sect for? Master Mu jutted his chin at the invitation that had been thrown on the table. Coming to give a letter of war. By the way, Qin Fair turns out to be the illegitimate daughter of the Divine Herb sex master. Is that old man trying to avenge her? Feng Ruching was startled. Qin Fair is his illegitimate daughter? Is that true? But the old Master Mu did not seem like someone who would lie. Could it be true? Feng Ruching thoughtfully picked up the invitation. If they don't come to me, they'll still go to them. Old Master, well, accept this invitation, the Divine Herb sect. In a quiet, seemingly fairyland-like courtyard, a young girl in a light blue dress looked graceful and soft as her feet landed in a lake of clear water, moving around her feet, crispy and itchy. Until now, as if she was still in a dream, Qin Fair still could not believe that she had abruptly changed from the eldest daughter of the Qin family of Tianshan Manor to the adopted daughter of the Divine Herb's sex master. Chapter 1297. Someone from the Divine Herb sect came to her life, changed in a blink of an eye, and even she was unable to regain her senses. The position of the Divine Herb sex master was the same as Gu Shi's. She had always envied Gu Yi. She envied her for being useless, yet having the supreme position and a father who loved her. At that time, she had never thought that she would be able to stay with the master of the Divine Herb sect someday in her life and be adopted by him. Fair. A gentle voice came from behind Qin Fair. Qin Fair slowly turned sideways and smiled. She looked at the man standing behind her and asked gently, Brother Zong, why are you here? Zong Yi was the only son of the Divine Herb sex master and the young master of this Divine Herb sect. He was a high-status, handsome, and mild-tempered man, and no one could compare to him. If only she had not met Nan Xian and did not experience so many heartbreaks. If she had met Zong Yi earlier, perhaps everything would have been different. However, that would never happen. Her heart was filled with hatred now, and she was unable to accept Zong Yi. Zong Yi was staring at Qin Fair gently. He still remembered that a few days ago, when his father knew that a girl from Tianshan Manor had made a breakthrough to advanced Holy Warrior tier in just a few months, he had quickly sent someone to go there. Unfortunately, something had happened to the person who went there, so he used the Divine Herb sect's secret method to teleport her back. And that day, Zong Yi was in the sacred spring at the back of the mountain. Qin Fair was like a fairy that fell from the sky in front of him, and also deep into his heart. It was love at first sight, and that was all. Later on, when he knew what had happened to Qin Fair, he was even more distressed that she had met such a cold and jealous woman. Me for extra chapters. The people of Tianshan Manor had been blinded by evil. How could they bully such a beautiful and innocent girl? Fair, my father asked us to go there. Zong Yi smiled and touched Qin Fair's head. Don't worry. I know how to slow your aging and even restore your youthful looks. Qin Feier smiled happily. All right. By the way, Zhongyi paused. The woman who fed you poison and caused you to age. Her name is Feng Ruqing, right? Qin Feier clenched her fists tightly as her breathing grew a little erratic. After a moment, she gave him a fake smile. Yes, this past year, I have made a breakthrough too quickly. Initially, she was the most favored woman in Tianxin Manor. But later, she felt that I'd stolen her limelight, so she demonized me and said that I was able to make a breakthrough so quickly because I had taken a forbidden drug, and that has made me look older, but I've gotten this far through my own strength, and she's obviously the one who has tricked me into taking the drug that has done this to me. She was afraid that I would steal her spot and afraid that the world would know that I'm more powerful than her. She wanted to destroy all of my power. Brother Zong, as a member of the Divine Herb sect, have you ever heard of any spirit herb that can make one breakthrough to Holy Warrior tier? I've never wanted to fight anyone for anything in my life. She likes Nancian, and I have let him go. She wanted the glamour, and I was willing to give it all to her. But why won't she let me go? Why? Qin Feier covered her cheeks with her hands as tears flowed down from between her fingers in pain. She was not faking her sadness. Although she had not been growing more wrinkles lately, her hair had turned white at the roots, which had made her panic, and her tears could not stop flowing. Chapter 1298. The sect master's silly son, Zong, stroked the fine lines at the corners of Qin Feier's eyes heartbreakingly. Feier, I promise you, I'll make sure that you will recover soon. She was a beautiful young woman, and yet she was harmed to such an extent. She had lost her beauty, and her hair had also turned as white as an old lattice. How much patience did she have to face all this? Looking at Qin Feier's teary eyes, Zhong Yi's eyes sank a little. I will also avenge you. I will never let anyone hurt you recklessly again. Even though she no longer looked young, Zhong Yi could still see from her features how stunning she once was. Because of jealousy, that woman had treated a kind girl this way. That vicious woman probably had lost her mind. Thank you, Brother Zong. Qin Feier smiled softly. Her bitter smile, filled with pain and sadness, was like a sword that pierced Zhong Yi's heart. But her long fingers stroked the fine lines at the corners of her eyes, smiling bitterly. I'm not worthy of your attention, Brother Zong. I'm already contented that my adoptive father is willing to take pity on me and accept me as his daughter, really. Zong, he was a bit sullen as he held Qin Feier's shoulders. Stop saying silly things. Do you think I care so much about looks? Furthermore, you are still beautiful, so why do you belittle yourself? As soon as he finished his words, he raised his hand and pulled Qin Feier into his arms. He did not notice the cold smile that hung on the corners of her lips. Let's go. My father is still waiting for us. Let's go to the study room first. Zong, he patted Qin Feier's back. You don't have to worry too much. Just make yourself at home. All right. Qin Feier smiled faintly as she raised her hand and wiped the tears in the corners of her eyes. I never believed that good people would have good rewards. But when I met my adoptive father and you, I just realized that God really favors people with good intentions, and it's worth all the grievances that I've had to endure back then. The way she said the word worth tugged at Zhong Yi's heartstring. Me for extra chapters. But he did not say anything more. Fair had suffered so much pain and grievance in the past. From now on, he would definitely take good care of her and never allow anyone to bully her again. The Divine Herb sect. In the middle of the luxurious study room, Zhong Fu stood coldly with both his hands clasped behind his back. He stared at the courtyard outside the window, expressionlessly. Standing behind him was an elder who looked slightly hesitant. It seemed like it took half a moment before he vocalized the question he had wanted to ask for a while now. Master, although it's a bit strange that Qin Feier can reach Holy Warrior tier in a short period, I think there's no need for Sect Master to adopt her as your daughter. But why? Zhong Fu's face was calm. What happened to the results of your investigation, and the disciple you sent there back then? What exactly has happened to him? Master, The elder replied in embarrassment. Tianshan Manor has been very securely guarded lately. Our people can't get in, and as for Qin Feier, does Sect Master think that she could reach Holy Warrior tier on her own, or through an unknown object? Zhong Fu smiled coldly and sneered. If Qin Feier is really capable of this, she wouldn't have been poisoned without realizing it. She has used up all her strength and cannot bring any benefit to us anymore. Then, why did Sect Master... Chapter 1299. The Sect Master's silly son too. I bring Qin Feier back, because I wanted to know if she was the one mentioned in the ancient book. It's just a pity that she's so far behind in both temperament and strength. One Zhong Fu shook his head. She made a breakthrough extremely quickly, but she is too stupid. I can no longer believe that she is the one mentioned in the ancient book. The one back then was also a person with great talent. Otherwise, she would not have such a pivotal role in this mainland. After that person left, she had only left a sign in the ancient book that she would definitely return in the future. No one knew when she would return, but anyone who knew these pieces of history would be clear on one thing. If there was an unknown person who had risen to fame in a short time, that could imply her return. The Divine Herb sect had been established for nearly 1,000 years, and the ancestors had discovered few people with such characteristics. But in the end, none of them were really her. But a look of helplessness appeared on Zhong Fu's cold face. My silly son has fallen in love with Qin Feier. He is so naive as he has never met anyone before and has no idea of the evil in the human heart. I have taken her as my adoptive daughter to prevent my foolish son from marrying her. Besides, Qin Feier isn't useless at all. At least, I want to know what method she has used to make a breakthrough so quickly. Initially, Zhong Fu could have tortured her for a confession, but unfortunately, he could not do so because his foolish son had fallen for Qin Feier, and he only had one son whom he had spoiled like a precious pearl. So, no matter how cruel and cold he was to others, he would always tolerate his beloved son. There was nothing he could do but to take Qin Feier as his adoptive daughter. Siblings could not get married. Even though Qin Feier was only an adoptive daughter, she was forbidden by society to marry his son since she had this status. He also made it clear to Qin Feier that she and Zhong Yi could only be brother and sister, not husband and wife. A sound of footsteps suddenly came from outside the door. Zhong Fu slowly turned his head. He saw Zhong Yi and Qin Feier coming in from outside the study room, stepping slowly in front of him. Zhong Fu frowned slightly as he looked at Qin Feier's face that seemed like she had been crying. He felt somewhat upset. Father! Zhong Yi's face changed drastically when he saw Zhong Fu's slightly sunken face. Didn't you summon us here to tell us something? Me for extra chapters. Well, Zhong Fu's face gradually softened a little. Feier, I heard that Mu Ling from the Mu family once wanted you to be Nan Xian's concubine. Is that true? Of course, this news was not something that Zhong Fu only knew now. After all, the current Tianshan Manor was securely guarded, and the outsiders were no longer allowed to enter. He knew about this a long time ago. He had brought back Qin Feier to learn the secret of her breakthrough, and not let her wander around and cause trouble. With the gathering that was coming up later, if Qin Feier still wanted to pester Nan Xian, he could not mess with that man again. He would have never forgotten when Nan Xian had forcefully snatched someone from his manor and drugged him. If he could, he would not want to have anything to do with Nan Xian or the Mu family in his life, ever again. Unfortunately, people from the Divine Herb sect were unable to enter Tianshan Manor, and Zhong Fu would not have known that it was the Divine Herb sect's disciple who had actually snatched the person from the Mu family's front gate. Otherwise, he would never have left Qin Feier in the Mu family. Chapter 1300. The Sect Master's Silly Son 3 Father. Zhong Yi raised his head. He frowned, looking slightly impatient. What do you mean by that? That's all in the past, and Feier has long parted away with him. He was the one who has wronged Feier in the first place. Zhong Fu did not say anything. He smiled and looked at Qin Feier. Feier, what I've asked you just now, is that true? Qin Feier's face was pale as she raised her head and looked at the smile on Zhong Fu's face before she finally nodded. Yes, it's true. She did not know what Zhong Fu wanted by asking this, but it was no longer a secret in Tianxin Manor, so she could not deny it. Oh, Zhong Fu smiled faintly. Soon, there will be a gathering. I heard that the Mu family's young lady has returned, and am sure they will come to this gathering as well. Fair, I don't want you to cause any more trouble with Nancian. If it were not for his son, he would have almost said something like, I don't want you to be involved with Nancian anymore. He was not afraid of the Mu family. In fact, he was not even afraid of Gu Shi. In Tianxin Manor, he was only afraid of Nancian. One he could still remember the feeling that felt like a knife on his neck, chilly and cold, as if his head would fall to the ground at any time. He was helpless. Nancian was too strong, and he did not know if there was anyone else in Sangyu mainland who could defeat him. If he had the strength, it would not be difficult for him to force Nancian to kneel before him. It was just that he was not as strong as Nancian, so he could only endure whatever thrown at him by Nancian. All right, that's all I have to say. You can go down first. I know you don't like to have any contact with outsiders, but you must attend this gathering. You are the heir of my divine herb sect, so you must go and get to know the other forces' leaders. Zhong, he was just about to leave before he suddenly stopped and said coldly, I'm looking forward to this gathering. He was even more looking forward to how the wicked woman who had bullied Fair, being on her knees, begging for mercy. As soon as he finished speaking, he took the lead and walked out. Qin Fair turned pale, pondering over what Zhong he had just said. She regained her senses a few minutes later and walked out of the study room. The door behind the study room was closed. The cold wind made Qin Fair pull her jacket closer to her body, shielding herself from the chill that pierced into her body. She knew from the start that Zhong Fu's purpose in taking her in was not that simple me for extra chapters. Only after hearing Zhong Fu's words did she understand Zhong Fu's purpose. Qin Fair lifted her pale face to the dazzling sun in the sky. She smiled bitterly as she thought about what would happen to her in the future. It's all right. Marrying Zhong Fu was better than being forced by her father to be a concubine to that bastard. At least, Zhong Fu genuinely liked her. Her adoptive father had specifically warned her against being involved with Nancian for Zhong Yi's sake. If that was the case, she could only obey her adoptive father and stay with Zhong Yi in the future. Moreover, her love for Nancian was no longer there. There was only anger and resentment left. Qin Fair caressed the fine lines on her eyebrows and eyes again, sighing lightly. Perhaps relying on the divine herb sect will help me be relieved of the aftermath of this breakthrough. No woman wanted to be old. To regain her youthful look, she was willing to stay in the divine herb sect. Inside the study room, Zhong Fu's smile disappeared as he watched the two leave. The elder standing behind him was silent for a moment before he asked in a deep voice, Sect Master, last time young master is mentioned, a spirit herb that can restore Maiden Fair's youth. Chapter 1301. The Sect Master's Silly Son 4. We do have that spirit herb that can heal her, but do you think I would give it to her easily? Is already fascinated by her. If she gets her beauty back, wouldn't he be even more infatuated? Zhong Fu paused. Moreover, when I've found that spirit herb, I'll use it to force Qin Fair to reveal the secret of her breakthrough to Holy Warrior tier, the elder sighed. If the Sect Master did not care too much about the young master, perhaps it would not have been so troublesome. Why did the young master become so obsessed with Qin Fair? The elder did not care how beautiful Qin Fair used to be, but now she was just a woman with white hair and fine lines on her face. The young master was only in his early 20s, but why? Was he so infatuated with her? Sect Master, the elder paused. Forgive me for speaking too much. This Qin Fair is still young. I'm sure she is not as innocent as you think. She is more ambitious, and I'm afraid it's a bit difficult to get her to talk just by using that spirit herb. Qin Fair was the kind of woman who would grab onto the last surviving hope. She knew that the young master liked her, and she knew that the Sect Master loved the young master very much. If she could win the young master's heart, the Sect Master would be helpless. Bringing back a woman like this would definitely be disastrous to the Divine Herb sect. Zhong Fu rubbed his temples, feeling a headache coming on. There's no need to think about it so much for now. We'll discuss this matter after the meeting. The Divine Herb Sect Assembly is the most important now. The Divine Herb Sect Assembly was held once every 3 years. It had always been like this. Every 3 years, the Divine Herb Sect would invite the major forces of the reclusive world to discuss matters together. Even the two forces that had a grudge against each other in the reclusive world would sit together peacefully on that day. They had to respect the sect master after all. Yes, master. The elder responded respectfully. Tianshan Manor. In the backyard of the Mu family, a young girl leaned lazily against the pavilion. Her fine black hair floated around like a waterfall, beautiful like in a picture. Standing beside her was a quiet and well-behaved woman with a disfigured face. She was blinking as she watched Feng Ruching. Xiaoya. Feng Ruching smiled and beckoned to her. You don't have to stand, just come over and sit here. This mute girl was brought back from the chief manor's backyard a year ago by Feng Ruching and had since remained by her side. Me for extra chapters. The year Feng Ruching left, Xiaoya had somehow disappeared and never returned. And even though Suyi had sent people to look for her, they could not find her. Unexpectedly, Xiaoya came back when Feng Ruching returned to Tianshan Manor. Xiaoya sat nicely next to Feng Ruching and looked at her quietly. I won't ask where you've been this year. Just follow me around from now on, and don't get lost. Feng Ruching did not mind and stroked Xiaoya's messy hair. And your hairstyle looks cute, but I like a girl who looks clean and fresh. If you can't tidy it up yourself, next time, let the Mu family servant do it for you. Xiaoya nodded obediently. Her eyes were like the twinkling stars in the vast night sky. Before Feng Ruching could continue, a joyful voice suddenly came from outside the courtyard, carrying excitement and exhilaration. Xiao Qing! Feng Ruching was startled, and as she glanced sideways, she saw an extremely familiar but long-lost figure running wildly toward her. Unfortunately, her speed was a little slower, and she was overtaken by a snow-white figure, which pounced directly on Feng Ruching. How? Chapter 1302. The assembly is approaching. The snow-white figure was kicked hard before it could get close to Feng Ruching. The long, straight leg landed squarely on the snow wolf's body. It cried helplessly, rolled a few times on the ground, and gazed at Feng Ruching with its teary eyes. The young girl who followed right behind the snow wolf suddenly shivered as she stopped running, not daring to move. Looking at the sudden appearance of this wolf and that person, Feng Ruching gently raised her eyebrows and asked, What are you doing here? Oh, Aunt Suyi is afraid you will be lonely because of that wild man. I mean, Nan Xian is not by your side, so she sent someone to pick me up. And this wolf is following me on its own. It has nothing to do with me. Tang Yin waved her hand, trying very hard to show that she had nothing to do with the snow wolf. Qinger, just as Feng Ruching wanted to say something, a soft voice came from outside the door. Feng Ruching turned and saw Nailin Yin standing at the courtyard entrance with a smile hidden in her eyes. However, Tang Yin did not dare to go forward as her eyes fell upon Nailin Yin. Although she was only Tang Luo's niece, Tang Luo had done so many things back then that had hurt Nailin Yin. Tang Yin felt ashamed by it. Moreover, Nailin Yin was her favorite woman's mother. After thinking about it, Tang Yin still bit her lower lips and said bashfully, Aunt Nailin, about Tang Luo, I am sorry if she had ignored the Tang family elders and gone to the back of the mountain to meet Nailin Yin. Then, she would definitely have noticed something when she met Feng Ruching. She was also responsible for this matter. Nailin Yin was not angry. She smiled and looked at her gently. Don't worry, Tang Luo is Tang Luo, and you are you. You have defended my daughter back then, so why do you need to apologize to me? And Nailin doesn't blame me? Tang Yin's big eyes were like the twinkling stars in the vast night sky. Well, I don't blame you. This girl was willing to rebel against the Tang family for Qinger back then, and Nailin Yin was not a woman who would easily be offended, so how could she blame Tang Yin? Me for extra chapters. Tang Yin smiled. Her face was like a peach blossom, and her smile was as bright as sunshine. She looked cute and innocent. Thank you, Aunt Nailin. Tang Luo is just scum. I've long cut ties with that kind of scum. Nailin Yin smiled. Her gentle gaze made people feel like they were being bathed in the spring breeze. Perhaps in front of Feng Ruching, she was never the invincible Nailin Empress as she was on the battlefield, but only a loving mother. At this moment, no one noticed that when Tang Yin appeared, Xiao Ya's entire body was trembling. Her eyes were filled with tears, and she tried so hard to keep them from falling. Mother, the Divine Herbs Sect Assembly. When does it start? Feng Ruching frowned as her bright eyes darkened. In about half a month. Chainer, Fengyan Manor has also received the invitation. So, you and Chainer will prepare later, and well return to Fengyan Manor. Tianshin Manor was not her territory after all. If she wanted to go to that gathering, she must attend it as the representative of Fengyan Manor. Furthermore, she and the Divine Herbs Sect still had some scores to settle. Nailin Yan's eyes turned cold. She was kidnapped by Gu Jinyang and kept in the Divine Herbs Sect back then. Without the Divine Herbs Sect Assembly and the people from other forces present, perhaps she would not have been able to escape the Divine Herbs Sect, and Gu Jinyang would not have been punished. Chapter 1303. The assembly is approaching too, but she did not expect that Gu Jinyang would be released after only a few years of imprisonment, starting troubles everywhere and killing so many people in Lu Yun Kingdom. Now that Gu Jinyang was dead, she would definitely go after the Divine Herbs Sect to settle this debt. What goes around comes around. Back then, she was the one who needed to use the Divine Herbs Sect Assembly to escape from Gu Jinyang. And now, she would never fear the Divine Herbs Sect again. Feng Ruching naturally knew that it was not easy to eliminate all the hatred in Nailin Yan's heart. She gently held Nailin Yan's hand. I also want to settle something with the Divine Herbs Sect, so we'll go together. If the Divine Herbs Sect dared to snatch someone from her, then she also dared to destroy the entire Divine Herbs Sect. Feng Ruching turned cold at the thought of how the Divine Herbs Sect had snatched someone away from her. In particular, they had taken Qin Feier away in front of her in a public place. What would that do to her reputation? They had made her lose her pride. She would never let this group of people go, even if the Divine Herbs Sect knelt to send Qin Feier back to her. How? The snow wolf whimpered, as if it wanted to make its presence known. Feng Ruching finally turned to the snow wolf. Tier 5 now. The snow wolf almost jumped up with excitement filling its wild body. Its master finally realized its strength. The wolf was so excited. Would its master praise it? Or maybe kiss and hug it? Should it reject it or accept the reward? Just as the snow wolf rose from the ground with a smile on its face, a voice suddenly poured down like a basin of cold water right over its head. Tier 5. Too weak. The snow wolf's face seemed to crack as it whined pitifully. It was not only Tier 5, but Tier 5 advanced level. And soon, it would reach Tier 6. Me for extra chapters. In these few years, it had cultivated and secretly eaten its master's spirit herbs only to surpass the three-striped tiger and Biri too. It wanted to become its master's strongest spirit beast. Now, except for that dark dragon, there was no other stronger spirit beast living with its master. Could it be that its master wanted it to overtake the dark dragon as well? Feng Ruching really put the wolf in a tough situation. The more the snow wolf thought about it, the more frustrated it became. It must get its master's spiritual chi. No, it must get its master's caresses to become better. Where's your son? Feng Ruching looked at the snow wolf and asked, somewhat confused. The snow wolf got up immediately. All its grievances suddenly disappeared and were replaced by a wave of full-blown anger and resentment. Master even dares to mention this matter. It had worked hard to make a breakthrough from a Tier 4 spirit beast to Tier 5 advanced level. But that little tiger, when it was picked up 2 years ago, it was still a newly born little tiger. Now 2 years had passed, and that little tiger had made a breakthrough to Tier 5 intermediate level. That tiger had almost surpassed the snow wolf. The snow wolf was no longer the most powerful little beast. The worst thing was every time it approached a female wolf, the little tiger would come over and join them, and the female wolves would run away in fear, thinking that the tiger was its son. One poor thing, it was single until now. Seeing the snow wolf pulling at its head cute like a dog. Feng Ruching did not continue asking, but she patted the snow wolf's head, silently reassuring it. Chapter 1304. The assembly is approaching 3 after a moment of silence. Feng Ruching turned and faced Nailan Yin. I've been ready since the day the divine herb sex people came. Mother, we'll be ready to leave. Tang Yin's eyes lit up when she heard Feng Ruching's words. Xiao Qing, are you going back to Fengyan Manor? Can I follow you? Fengyan Manor was like a second home to Xiao Qing, but Tang Yin had never been there. It must be fun. After all, that vixen Nan Xian had never been to Fengyan Manor, and she would be the first person to set foot in it. All right. Feng Ruching laughed as she turned her head. She came to an abrupt halt when she saw Xiao Ya's teary eyes. Xiao Ya? Xiao Ya was in a trance, but Feng Ruching's voice brought back her senses. She wiped the tears from the corners of her eyes and smiled at Feng Ruching. Tang Yin raised her head as she heard Feng Ruching's words. Suddenly, a face that was disfigured beyond recognition appeared before her eyes. Tang Yin could not tell how old that woman was, but her eyes were exceptionally clear, so clear that it made her heart tremble. She felt her heart shaking her with inexplicable deep emotion, unexplainable. She was not sure why her heart was in pain the moment she saw that woman. She had never seen her before? Had she? Xiao Ya, what's wrong? Feng Ruching had never seen Xiao Ya in such a condition. She then followed Xiao Ya's gaze and saw Tang Yin's adorable face. Xiao Ya hurriedly shook her head and pointed at the wounds on her face, showing that it was these wounds that had caused her some discomfort. Tang Yin was somewhat shocked to see Xiao Ya, and she could not help but get closer to her. Her heart filled with pain as she asked, You can talk? Xiao Ya was startled and nodded. Then, your injury. Tang Yin bit her lower lip hard, her voice trembling. Who did this? Who did this to you? Xiao Ya dropped her eyes to hide the hurt. It was as if there was endless sorrow filling her eyes. That person, it was a pain she never wanted to feel in her life. Me for extra chapters. It was also the hurdle she could never get past. It was her unspeakable past. Therefore, facing Tang Yin's clear eyes, Xiao Ya could only shake her head and smile. She raised her trembling hand, wanting to touch Tang Yin's head. But after seeing her dirty hand, she retracted her hand, somewhat afraid to touch her. The girl in front of her was so clean it seemed like she was having a good time. Feng Ruching looked at Xiao Ya and then at Tang Yin. She remembered the first time she saw this woman in the back mountain of the chief manor. She inexplicably wanted to take her away, and at that moment, she always felt a familiar feeling toward this woman. But she had no way of finding the reason for that feeling. Now, when she thought about it again, it was her eyes. Even though she had scars all over her body and her face was ruined, her pair of eyes were still as clear as water. It was too similar to Tang Yin's. Suddenly, Feng Ruching recalled what the Tang family's elder, Tang Yi, had said when he came to her back then. Tang Yin was not the second master of the Tang family's biological daughter, but he had brought her back from somewhere else. And that second master of the Tang family had told this secret only to Tang Yi before he died. Chapter 1305. The assembly is approaching 4. Tang Yin was a beast man and had a unique physique. If she broke the seal inside of her, her strength would definitely increase by leaps and bounds, and there would be many people wanting to take her away and cultivate with her to improve their strength. Xiao Ya was not a spirit beast. She was a human being. If Xiao Ya had a relationship with Tang Yin, could it be that she was... No. Impossible. Tang Yin had just mentioned who had hurt Xiao Ya, and with Xiao Ya's expression, it seemed that that person must have been intimate with her, that had made her unable to say anything and be in such pain. Tang Yin... Feng Ruching interrupted Tang Yin, who had wanted to ask further questions. She doesn't want to talk, so don't force her. When she wants to talk, she will tell us. Xiao Ya's body trembled, and she looked at Feng Ruching gratefully. But Feng Ruching's gaze was like a light that penetrated her soul and her thoughts. Such a feeling made Xiao Ya's heart inexplicably panic. She lowered her head and remained silent, not daring to look directly into Feng Rooking's eyes. Because the young girl in front of her was someone she did not want to deceive in her life. Therefore, she did not want to hide it in front of Feng Ruching, and the only way she could do was avoiding her gaze. I'm sorry. I have no way to tell you everything, but it's great that you're the same as you were before. Xiao Ya's heart gradually calmed down. She never thought that the daughter she had entrusted to others would have a relationship with Feng Ruching. Perhaps this was an unbreakable fate. No matter how many years had passed, it was still the same. However, she was no longer the young girl who could be pampered and behave as she pleased with her affection. Many people in this world wanted to be immortal. Only when they had had such an experience would they realize that immortality was only a punishment. The sun was so bright. Feng Ruching was no longer speaking. She slowly lifted her eyes and saw a young man in front of her. His smile was as bright as sunshine, warming her heart. Ching, I've already prepared everything that should be prepared. Should we go? Feng Ruching nodded slightly. If Nanxian comes back, he can go to Fengyan Manor to look for me. He'll say goodbye to Suyi and the others first, then we'll go back to Fengyan Manor. All right, me for extra chapters. Feng Chun smiled faintly. In the young man's bright eyes, there was always only Feng Ruching and nothing more. His new identity, perhaps he would not be able to adapt to it for a short while, but he was willing to accept these family members for Qingqing. He was also willing to spend the upcoming countless years fulfilling his duty as a son to his parents, which he had not been able to do back then. Feng Chun turned to Nailin Yin, who seemed to be still a bit awkward. Mother, Nailin Yin was startled. This was the first time in these few days that Feng Chun had called her mother. She understood that it was not that Chainer had not accepted her. He just had not uttered this word since he was a child, and it would take some time to get used to it. She was willing to give him time, and she could wait. However, she did not expect that he would adapt it to this soon. Chainer, all these years, I've made you suffer. Nailin Yin gently hugged Feng Chun. Feng Chen's body was a little stiff and seemed quite uncomfortable, but he did not push Nailin Yin away. All these years, Nailin Yin had also suffered a lot. It was not like she had lost him on purpose. How could he bear to let her continue to suffer? Furthermore, even if Nailin Yin had purposely abandoned him, he would be willing to accept them for Qingqing. It was just that a young man who had not enjoyed affection for many years was a little uncomfortable all of a sudden from receiving it. Tang Yin looked at Nailin Yin before she turned to Feng Chun, confused. Who could tell her what she did not know that had happened in these past few years? Chapter 1306. The Divine Herb Sect Assembly. It's getting late. Let's go. Feng Tianyu stood next to Feng Chun. He lifted his hand and gently rested it on Feng Chen's shoulder, letting out a heavy sigh. It was no wonder that he had been so close to Feng Chun from the first time he saw him. But at that time, he had never thought that this young man who was following his daughter around would be his son. Otherwise, he would not have been allowed Feng Chun to return to that nightmarish place again. Wait, Tang Yin's brain was not entirely clear, and she was stunned. Xiao Qin, what's going on here? How did Qin Chun? He's my missing brother, surnamed Feng, and the Qin family has nothing to do with him. Feng Rooking's voice was as gentle as the breeze, but it was like thunder from a clear sky, smashing Tang Yin's brain. Qin Chun is Qingqing's younger brother? A biological brother? But if they were brother and sister, why were their personalities so different? Xiao Qing was gentle and kind, and Qin Chun. No, Feng Chun was cold and had never smiled at anyone. And he was not as gentle as Nailin Yan's cousin. Tang Yin had always lived with the Nailin family, but she did not have too many special feelings toward the Nailin family. However, once she left, she realized that she actually missed the Nailin family quite a bit. She missed Lady Nailin, who treated her like a mother, the kind and amiable old Master Nailin, the innocent and naive Nailin Dyer, and the stingy Nailin Zhangqian. And Nailin Jing, who was gentle and kind. Tang Yin subconsciously bit her lower lip. She did not know when she had begun to treat the Nailin family as her home, and she could never leave them again. A long time had passed. During the half-month period, the Divine Herb Sect was bustling. All the major forces came. Fortunately, the Divine Herb sect had occupied many mountains and had enough space for them. Me for extra chapters. This was the first time the Divine Herb sect had held such a large-scale assembly. Previously, it was just a gathering of several major forces. However, every gathering or assembly would always be held in the Divine Herb sect. There was a rumor that the Divine Herb sect's master had taken in an adoptive daughter some time ago, and this adoptive daughter lived a miserable life. Criminals poisoned her, and even the brother she loved the most since childhood had abandoned her for another beauty. Her brother was such an ungrateful kid. Of course, if these rumors had nothing to do with the Divine Herb sect, they would just take it as a joke. But because the woman in the rumors was the adoptive daughter of the Divine Herb sect's master, these people felt sympathy for her. Whether this sympathy was because of Zhong Fu or Qin Fei herself was unknown. In the Divine Herb sect's courtyard, Zhong Fu's face darkened, and his eyes sunk as he said coldly, "Who the hell is spreading those rumors about the Divine Herb sect? What's even more outrageous is that it's even rumored that I have invited so many forces this time for Qin Fei." Ridiculously, the forces he had invited were not as huge as Tianshan Manor or Deity's Gate, but they were not too bad in this reclusive world. As for why they had not been invited before, he did not want the other forces to participate in the gathering of the three major forces. But this time, there was really no way. Zhong Yi was old enough to get married, but he did not want to go out of this place, and he did not like any of these disciples in the sect. Master Gu from Tianshan Manor only had a daughter, Gu Yi, and he would never allow his only daughter to marry into the Divine Herb sect, and Deity's Gate's master had no granddaughter. That was why Zhong Fu had specially invited all the major forces to attend this time for Zhong Yi's marriage's sake. Chapter 1307. The Divine Herb Sect Assembly 2 in the end. It had become a gathering for his adoptive daughter? Ridiculous. It was so ridiculous. The elder standing behind Zhong Fu was somewhat silent, but he finally opened his mouth when he saw Zhong Fu was on the verge of exploding. "It's the young master." He was silent for a while. It was the young master who has deliberately publicized these rumors to make people hate those who had harmed Qin Fei. Zhong Fu was startled. He had thought that these were Qin Fei's plans, but he had not expected it to be Zhong Yi. But it might be true. Qin Fei was new to this city, and even if he had taken her as his adoptive daughter, she would not be so daring to do such things. This brat Zhong Yi, was he serious? What did he see in Qin Fei? Grand Elder, why is this bastard Zhong Yi so in love with Qin Fei? This Qin Fei doesn't look young anymore. I don't care if she had become that way because of the spirit herb. She will never get her youthful look back anyway. The Divine Herb sect has so many young and beautiful girls, so why does it have to be Qin Fei? The elder sighed lightly. Perhaps the young master has lost his mother since he was a child, so he is missing his mother? It was fortunate that Qin Fei was not here when the elder had said this. Otherwise, she probably would have been vomiting blood from anger on the spot from hearing this. She was a 28-year-old girl, but people were already saying that she was a mother of someone who was already over 20. Zhong Fu's face reflected discomfort, but if these rumors were spread by Zhong Yi, he would not be able to say anything more. He was the only son he had. He loved him and took good care of him since Zhong Yi was a child. If Zhong Yi was provoked, he might even try to flee with Qin Fei. As such, his Divine Herb sect would no longer have an heir. Forget it. Zhong Fu rubbed his temples. I don't care about these things. Just let them spread rumors without affecting my Divine Herb sect. What if? Zhong Fu knew that because he had not stopped the rumors or Zhong Yi back then, he had put the Divine Herb sect into a trap. Would he still make such a choice today? The assembly will begin tomorrow. Grand Elder, go and prepare yourself, and tell Zhong Yi this assembly is to let him choose his wife. I can indulge him before, but this time, absolutely not. Me for extra chapters. Yes, Sect Master. The elder did a fist and palm salute and retreated. Only Zhong Fu was left inside the courtyard, standing alone in a white robe. His eyes were full of sadness and loneliness. There were many forces within the reclusive world. Some forces had arrived several days earlier to stay at the Divine Herb sect. Of course, there were still other forces that came on that day. For example, Tianshan Manor, Deity's Gate, Paramount, and Fengyan Manor. With each announcement, the entire place was filled with excitement. People stood up, intending to see the faces that were usually impossible to see. Tianshan Manor has arrived. Deity's Gate has arrived. Paramount has arrived. The sound of the announcement echoed through the hall, causing the cheeks of everyone present to blush with excitement. Tianshan Manor's Manor Master, Gu Shi, Deity's Gate Master, and Master Jiu Ming from Paramount. Although Paramount was not as powerful as these forces, they still had a good reputation, especially the Paramount's Master, Jiu Ming. But all of them had heard that Paramount's Master was not Master Jiu Ming, but someone else. They were curious. What kind of person was this Paramount's Master that he had been able to make Jiu Ming submit to him so willingly? Somehow, he felt that this woman looked familiar as if he had seen her somewhere before, but he could not seem to recall it. Is she the lady of Fengyan Manor? I don't know who was fortunate enough to marry such a beautiful wife and give birth to such a stunning woman. Someone in the crowd muttered, his voice filled with envy. The mysterious Manor Master of Fengyan Manor is a woman? With such a beautiful face? I really want to know who her husband is. We're not going to get a chance to marry Fengyan Manor Master, but we can get our son to marry her stunning daughter. Feng Tianyu was neglected from the beginning. In Lu Yun Kingdom, no one had ever ignored him to this extent. When he came to this place, it was clear that he had been standing next to Yenner. He could not believe that no one had even noticed him. Who is Yenner's husband? Are these bastards blind? Can't you all see that there is another human here? Chapter 1309. The Divine Herb Sect Assembly for Feng Tianyu turned livid as he glanced coldly at those who were staring at his wife and daughter. In the assembly hall, Gui had not taken her eyes off of Feng Ruching since her appearance. Her eyes were filled with delight at the sight of the young girl walking slowly inside the hall. But before Gui could react, a figure that was faster than her had already stepped forward to greet Feng Ruching. The man wore a silver mask on his face. He smiled faintly as his evil eyes gazed down at the young girl warmly. Little Qing, it's been a long time. You seem to have grown a little taller. Feng Ruching stopped in her tracks. Ever since she had gone to Tianshan Manor back then, she and Jiu Ming had never seen each other again. It had been a year since they parted. You're still wearing a mask? Feng Ruching looked at the silver mask on Jiu Ming's face and asked with a faint smile. Jiu Ming's hand caressed the cold mask and smiled flirtatiously. Well, because of my face, he paused and leaned close to Feng Ruching. His hot breath warmed the young girl's cheeks. Only little Qinger can see. Feng Ruching's face changed slightly as she subconsciously turned her head sideways, avoiding Jiu Ming's warm breath. Don't expect me to give the state preceptor to you. Jiu Ming was speechless. This girl is so smart, but why can't she understand this? Since when did he have feelings for Nanxian? The people in Paramount said that you couldn't stop reading about the things that happened between men. Oh, and also, when I was not around back then, you deludedly tried to hook up with my state preceptor. So, in short, Feng Ruching had only seen Jiu Ming as a gay, and he would never be able to change her perception of him. Their loud voices were spreading through the entire hall. All people present were dumbstruck by Feng Ruching's words. Initially, these people thought that there was a relationship between Jiu Ming and Feng Ruching when they saw him walking closer to Feng Ruching. But Master Jiu Ming of Paramount is gay? Me for extra chapters. Jiu Ming's face darkened. Only after quite a while did he gradually calm down, taking a few steps closer to Feng Ruching and smiled evilly. Little girl, you have tainted my reputation if you don't compensate me. I won't let you go today. Feng Ruching sneered. How? You devote yourself to me. What do you think? Feng Ruching was speechless. Without waiting for any reaction from Feng Ruching, a figure leaped up instantly and attacked Jiu Ming. A cold light flashed in Jiu Ming's eyes. He wanted to attack, but after seeing who the person rushing toward him was, he hastily retracted his hand and took a step to the side, narrowly avoiding the attack. You're too presumptuous. Feng Tianyu was furious, and his eyes seemed as if they could spew fire. All of you just want to look at my daughter. Get the hell out of here. No one is allowed to be my son-in-law. Jiu Ming frowned. Feng Tianyu is so furious, it seems like he still hasn't accepted Nan Xian. Well, he would not be happy if Nan Xian could easily marry Qing'er. He must do something to Nan Xian. At least, something that could make him feel happy. It seemed like Nan Xian could no longer stay calm as before. Jiu Ming smiled. He wanted to see how Nan Xian was going to make Feng Tianyu accept him. He was more than looking forward to the helpless and painful expression on Nan Xian's face. For Feng Ruking's happiness, Jiu Ming was willing to not compete with Nan Xian, but it did not mean that he was willing to watch his rival get what he wanted. He must let Nan Xian suffer, so that Nan Xian would understand that it was not an easy task for him to marry his Qing. Chapter 13:10. The Divine Herb Sect Assembly v. Gu Yi. It was furious. She fiercely rushed toward Jiu Ming, lifted her long legs, and kicked him in front of the public. Jiu Ming did not dare to attack Feng Tianyu in front of Feng Ruqing, and Gu Yi was nothing in his eyes. Therefore, when Gu Yi's kick came, he lifted his evil cold gaze and looked at Gu Yi. Bang! Gu Yi's body instantly flew like an arrow from the bow and fell messily in front of Gu Shi. Gu Shi held his forehead, feeling a little embarrassed. Jiu Ming and little Qing'er obviously have a special relationship. And Nan Xian is the one who should be jealous, not you. Why are you up there? But his own daughter was bullied. Gu Shi still had to step forward and pull Gu Yi behind him. His face was cold and grim. Master Jiu Ming, my daughter is close to Qing'er. Have you ever thought of Qing'er when you did this to her? Jiu Ming glanced at Gu Shi with a cold, evil gaze. For little Qing, I won't argue with this girl. Gu Shi sneered. I should be the one to say that. I won't fight with you after what you've done to my daughter for Qing'er. Everyone was silent. No one had expected that the assembly would be so tense before it even began. But the one who caused the fight was the lady of Fengyun Manor. After seeing such a scene, these people retracted their earlier statement that Feng Ruqing was only a beautiful dumb lady. It was because she was more powerful than an ordinary beauty. In one of the corners of the assembly arena, Qin Feier clenched her fists hard. Her face darkened as she looked at Feng Ruqing. She did not even realize that her nails were pinched into her palm. Unexpectedly, only half a month had passed, and they were meeting again. But now she was not the same person who would only endure the pain when being bullied by Feng Ruqing. So, what if these people sided with Feng Ruqing? She was now the adoptive daughter of the Divine Herb's sex master, and her status was not lower than Feng Ruqing. Me for extra chapters. Now everything had changed, and she no longer needed to be subservient to Feng Ruqing. Qin Feier exhaled slowly as all the tension on her face gradually loosened. She did not continue to hide behind the crowd. She walked toward the hall with Zhong Yi next to her. She was dressed in white, as pure as snow, and even though she was no longer young, she still had not lost her charm. After all, she was able to make Zhong Yi so enamored with her even under such circumstances was proof that she was still more beautiful than the average person. At this moment, everyone turned their eyes to look at them, and the people present were shocked after they saw Qin Feier, who was walking in slowly with Zhong Yi. She's the Divine Herb Sect Master's recently adopted daughter? Seeing how close she is to young Master Zhong, it seems like the rumors are true. But the Sect Master should be somewhat reluctant, right? He has taken Maiden Qin as his adoptive daughter, and now she is part of his family. If young Master Zhong insists on marrying her, can he actually marry his own sister? It's illegal. But young Master Zhong is not someone who would follow the rule. Otherwise, why didn't he stop it that day itself? I guess it's young Master Zhong who doesn't know about these things, right? If he wants to marry Maiden Qin, he must change her family's status first, or else it will be illegal. But if the Sect Master is unwilling to allow that, then no one can change it. Chapter 13:11. The initial encounter with Deity's Gate, Qin Feier's face darkened. She was obviously younger than Zhong Yi, yet these people said she was Zhong Yi's sister. However, when Qin Feier saw Feng Ruqing looking at her, All the grief and anger on her face suddenly disappeared and were replaced by calmness. She walked with Zhong Yi like a graceful white swan with an elegant smile, her eyes unblinking and were calm as ever. Zhong Fu looked at Qin Feier, who came with Zhong Yi, and in the end, he did not say anything. After all, the world knew that he had taken Qin Feier as his adoptive daughter, and he still had to give her some face. Feng Ruqing calmly looked at Qin Feier. Then she turned to Gu Shi. Master Gu, where are the people of the Mu family? And Nan Xian, is he back yet? Gu Shi smiled faintly. Maiden Feng, there's no need to worry. They have some things delayed and will come over later. I'm here, and no one will dare to bully your Fengyan manner. He glanced at the people present coldly, especially those who had just been talking about Feng Ruqing. His stern eyes were like knives, carrying a warning. Everyone could hear it and was somewhat shocked. This person, Gu Shi, he was different from any ordinary person. He did not like to befriend anyone, even if it was the Divine Herb sect or Deity's Gate. All these years, one had never heard of him befriending anyone. But why was he defending a girl like this? These people stared at Feng Ruqing for half a moment, and then looked at Nailin Yin, who was standing beside her. After almost 20 years, Fengyan Manor had grown from small, unknown forces to the powerful Fengyan Manor. Gu Shi from Tianxin Manor was a clever man. He naturally wanted to recruit Fengyan Manor. As the lady of Fengyan Manor, of course, he would treat her well. After all, Gu Shi would not live forever. There would be a day when he would bid farewell to the world of the living. His only daughter, Gu Yi, had no skills, so he must find a patron for her, even if he needed to betray Gu Yi's dignity. Looking at Gu Yi's expression as she stared at Feng Ruqing with her hand on her cheek unblinkingly, the crowd could not help but sneer. Well, it seems that this Gu Yi is willing to devote herself to Feng Ruqing. Me for extra chapters. And Feng Ruqing is indifferent to Jiuming. Maybe she likes a woman? Too bad. Such a beautiful girl, but she likes a woman. It's good that he's back. Feng Ruqing's heart was only for Nan Xian. As if she did not see the regretful expressions of the people around her, she sighed lightly and smiled as her hand gently caressed her lower abdomen. If Nan Xian was with Suyi, then he must already know about her pregnancy. No matter what, since Nan Xian would appear today, she would wait for him at the Divine Herb sect. Humph! A cold snorting sound was heard among the crowd. Jiuming turned his gaze and saw his uncle, Jiuyu, was standing and looking at Feng Ruqing with his dark gaze. Little girl, you're the one who has seduced Jiuming and made him give you paramount? What? The crowd was horrified. Paramount was established by Master Jiuming from Deity's Gate, and he also held an important position within the reclusive world. Chapter 13:12. The initial encounter with Deity's Gate 2. Moreover, Paramount had even sold countless herbal dishes, making it even more prosperous. These herbal dishes were enough to drive many cultivators crazy. If they could get the recipe for the herbal dish, they would probably be willing to exchange it for a city. Now listening to Jiuyu's words, it seemed that powerful Paramount was given away by Jiuming. Jiuming looked at Jiuyu coldly. My Paramount has nothing to do with you. Jiuyu's face darkened, and his gaze seemed to carry a storm. After seeing such a scene, Jiuyuan was slightly anxious. He quickly stood up and hurriedly said, Minger, he's your uncle. How can you be so rude to your uncle? As soon as this was said, Jiuming turned his cold gaze to Jiuyuan. The man's gaze was so cold that Jiuyuan could even see the coldness on his face through his mask. Jiuyuan's lips trembled. He did not understand what he was doing wrong. Is it wrong to want harmony in a family? Minger is a nephew, and he should respect his elders. How can he be so rude? Feng Tianyu laughed as he walked out slowly. His gaze was as sharp as a sword, and his face was cold and stern. Does Feng Tianyu's daughter need to rely on a man? That Paramount, even if you want to give it away, my daughter might not want to accept it. Indeed, Feng Ruqing did not want to accept it, but Jiuming had forced her and given her a hard time. Who are you? Jiuyu's face was cold and sullen as he shouted angrily. What qualifications does a bastard who relies on women have to shout at me? You. A cold, strong wind violently surged forward. Jiao Yu's body instantly fell backward, rolling down from his chair and landed in a heap. His mouth spurted out a mouthful of blood as he stared at Jiao Ming furiously. "Jiao Ming, you beast! How dare you attack me?" Jiao Ming waved his sleeve as his eyes flashed with sinister light. "I've warned you back then. Don't mess with Qing. I built Paramount. Deity's Gate has no right to stop me from giving to whoever I want to give it to." Jiao Yu's face changed as he recalled things that happened 2 years ago. This bastard Jiao Ming had beaten him up just for this girl and had even made threats against him. Me for extra chapters. Now, that bastard had embarrassed him in public. "Minger, you shut up." Jiao Ming's cold eyes turned to Jiao Yuan. "Since I was a child, I have been hunted by Deity's Gate, so I left Deity's Gate. I'm no longer involved with all of you. If it wasn't for Fengyan Manor Master passing by and saving me back then, Paramount wouldn't be like it is now." His words were like thunder from a clear sky, causing everyone present to be shocked. Feng Ruqing frowned and turned to Jiao Yu. Her eyes were glimmering with an eerie light. Jiao Yu was furious. "Jiao Ming, don't talk nonsense. I've never done such a thing, so don't you dare accuse me." Jiao Yuan was trying to persuade him. "Minger, you've really misunderstood. Your second uncle would never do such a thing. Even if Jiao Yu were an asshole, he would not have done something that would brutalize his fellow disciples. Jiao Yuan would never believe it." This time, the old master of Deity's Gate did not attend the assembly. It was Jiao Yu and Jiao Yuan who led their men. Initially, the old master had guessed that Jiao Yu would definitely meet Jiao Ming. He thought that everything would be fine. After all, Jiao Ming was the master of Deity's Gate. Even if he hated his second uncle, he would not make Jiao Yu look bad in public. Unfortunately. Chapter 13:13. The initial encounter with Deity's Gate 3 Father. Feng Ruqing rested her hands on Feng Tianyu's shoulders, preventing him from walking forward. She looked at Jiao Yuan and smiled. He would rather believe an outsider than his own son. Such a man. Do you think he deserves to be a father? Perhaps it was because Jiao Ming had defended Feng Ruqing just now that it made Feng Tianyu a lot less wary of him, and he could not help but smirk. "If it were me, I would believe whatever my child says. You can't even trust your children, but you trust an outsider. How can you even be fine when someone is trying to kill your son?" The assembly hall was suddenly quiet. No one thought that Feng Ruqing would really dare to embarrass Deity's Gate by relying on Gusher's support. TSK. As expected, beautiful women have no brains. Gusher helped her out for Fengyan Manor's sake. But would he choose to oppose Deity's Gate for her? What would he get from this? Was he an idiot? Just then, a cold laugh came from above. "Maiden Feng, you are too lenient. Jiao Yuan and his brother have known each other for so many years. Could it be that he still doesn't know his own brother? Who knows if Jiao Ming is lying? Maybe he doesn't want to leave Deity's Gate in peace?" This voice was loud and clear and echoed in every corner of the hall. Zhong Fu was somewhat surprised. He looked back at the arrogant Zhong Yi and frowned slightly. "Zhong Yi, does he have a grudge against Fengyan Manor? If there's no hatred, why is he so aggressive toward them?" But Zhong Yi had never left the Divine Herb sect, so why did not Zhong Fu know that he had made enemies? However, Zhong Fu did not stop Zhong Yi. To him, Fengyan Manor was nothing to be afraid of, even if it had Gu Shi's support. He only feared Nan Xian the most in Tian Shin Manor. Me for extra chapters. Oh, and the Mu family. Nan Xian's mother had returned to the Mu family, so he could not mess with the Mu family again. He wrote a letter to inform the other forces about this assembly, but only to the Mu family. He sent someone there to show his sincerity. Hopefully, the Mu family would see his sincerity and let Nan Xian visit the Divine Herb sect. He was too old to withstand Nan Xian's torment. Qin Feier smirked. "Brother Zhong, don't you know? Maiden Feng always likes to meddle in things and flaunt herself. Everyone loves her because they think she's a good girl, but she's sneaky and she harms people behind their back." Zhong Yi's face darkened. His anger flared as he thought about all the bullying that Qin Feier had suffered back then. The woman in front of him was indeed stunningly beautiful, but but he could still feel that she was not a good person at first glance. But Feyre was different. She was as pure as a small white flower. She was always being bullied and was unable to stop it. Only such a woman was worthy of his protection. "There's more," Cheen Feyre sneered. "She has been with a lot of men. I heard that she married someone in Lu Yun Kingdom, and then she fell in love with another man and divorced her former husband. And that was not enough. Even my brother, as well as Master Jiuming. She wants all of them. Brother Zong, you should be careful with her. She must have some ulterior motives coming to the Divine Herbs sect." Chapter 13-14. White Lotus Cheen Fei. Izong, he had no interest in Feng Ruqing, and after hearing Cheen Fei's words, his face darkened even more. He looked at Feng Ruqing coldly and smirked at her before he withdrew his gaze. Some girls really thought that they were beautiful and that all the men in the world would go crazy for them, but unfortunately, he only adored a soft and kind woman like Feyre. Feng Tianyu and Nalin Yin lifted their eyes at the same time, and their eyes landed directly upon Cheen Fei's face. Feng Chun, who had said nothing from the beginning, looked at Cheen Fei with a cold, knife-like gaze after hearing the mocking voice. Cheen Fei did not even care about other people's gazes, but only Feng Chun. His eyes were like a sword, scraping at her heart, causing her to bleed and pale in pain. Over the years, she had done her utmost to fix her relationship with him, but he still chose these people who had never spent their lives with him. It was so ridiculous. Cheen Fei clenched her fists so hard that her nails sunk deep into her palm. Her heart was no longer sad and in pain, but had been replaced by endless anger and resentment. She hated an ungrateful person like Cheen Chun, and even more so, she hated Feng Ruqing, who had taken everything away from her. It was good that everything had changed now, and in the future, Feng Ruqing could only bow to her. After thinking of all this, the tension on Cheen Fei's face gradually loosened. She then turned to Nalin Yin and Feng Tianyu and gave them a provocative smile. "So what if you guys feel even angrier? Do you still dare to attack me in front of my adoptive father?" Tisk, Gui laughed sarcastically. "What a pure and innocent white lotus. She makes it as if she is the most innocent in the world, and others are always at fault. It's so hypocritical and disgusting." Cheen Fei did not expect that Gu Yi would be the first one to react. She clenched her fists harder and did not say a word. "Maiden Gu, what do you mean by that?" Zong Yi's face darkened. If he had not known about the relationship between Gu Yi and Feng Ruqing, perhaps he would have thought that the person Gu Yi was talking about was Feng Ruqing. Me for extra chapters. After all, as far as he knew, the woman who bullied Fei was hypocritical and disgusting, yet she was flaunted herself in front of everyone. But now, no matter how foolish Zong Yi was, he knew that Gu Yi was not talking about Feng Ruqing. Since it was not Feng Ruqing, then it must be Fei. Gu Yi lifted her chin. "My father is right. The young master of the Divine Herbs sect is a fool. He can't even differentiate between right and wrong. He's foolish." Gu Shi could barely hold the cup in his hand properly. He almost dropped it. He seemed awkward, especially when others had looked at him in shock. He wished he could hide inside a hole. "Oh, my dear, can you please not say in public that I'm bad-mouthing people behind their backs? Do you want to embarrass your own father?" Insolence! Zhong Fu was furious and stood up fiercely. "Gu Shi, as the chief of Tianshan Manor, you should not bad-mouth people behind their backs. You have allowed your daughter to embarrass my son in public. Is this what a chief manor does?" Gu Shi glared at Gu Yi. He then turned to Zhong Fu and said gently, "After all, it's your adoptive daughter who started it first. You have allowed your adoptive daughter and son to speak badly of others. But you want to allow my daughter to do the same? Ridiculous." Chapter 13-15. White Lotus Cheen Fei. Tu Gu Shi loved Gu Yi deeply, but this girl had exposed him bad-mouthing others behind their backs in front of these people. However, Gu Shi did not blame Gu Yi, because she was only defending Feng Ruqing just now. Besides, everyone knew that he was so defensive. How could he back down just because the opponent was the Divine Herb sect? No one knew if the people from the Divine Herb sect could withstand little Chinger's huge pot. So, what he had said just now was only to save Zhong Fu's foolish son. Zhong Fu had to thank him for that. Zhong Fu seemed obviously bashful. It was indeed Qin Feier who had provoked them first. However, if he let them go this time, it meant that Tianxin Manor would always overpower his Divine Herb sect. What would people say about him? Master Gu, if what Feier said is true, a girl like this, he sneered. I don't know why you're defending her so much. I never expect the young lady from Fengyan Manor to be this bad. If I had known, I wouldn't have even invited her. Guard, come and take the people of Fengyan Manor out. The relationship between the Divine Herb sect and Tianxin Manor had turned sour. They could not fight because there was no difference in strength between these two forces. But they never wanted to be weaker than the other, and they wanted to be over each other's heads for every little thing. Initially, with Zhong Fu's usual way of dealing with things, he would not simply expel Fengyan Manor. After all, he understood that visitors were guests, and he had to respect them. Moreover, this was still Qin Feier's fault. However, Gu Shi was so biased, and he could not hold back anymore. Otherwise, what would people think of him? Would they not think that his Divine Herb sect was no match for Gu Shi? His pride was more important than life. Moreover, it was all Gu Shi's fault. If Gu Shi had not intervened in this situation, Zhong Fu would eventually stop Qin Feier. Now, Fengyan Manor had been driven away from this assembly. Gu Shi was the only person to be blamed. He had not forgotten the moment when Gu Jinyang had imprisoned a woman from the secular world. That woman had caused a mess at the assembly, and Gu Shi was the happiest person to watch that happen. He even humiliated the Divine Herb sect in front of the crowd. He would remember this debt. Jiu Yu smiled proudly. I agree with the sect master's decision. These people must be removed from this place. What right does a vicious person like them have to attend our assembly? Brother, you should also talk to Minger. How could he hang out with such a person? He even wants to give paramount to her. In my opinion, your son is easily overwhelmed by beauty. We should better get paramount back before it falls into the hands of outsiders. Jiu Yuan was a bit hesitant, and eventually looked at Jiu Ming with a disapproving gaze. It seemed that he was also unwilling to let Jiu Ming be with Feng Ruqing. Me for extra chapters. The entire hall was quiet. This was no longer about the fight between Fengyan Manor and Qin Feier. But it was about the three major forces, so if any one of them opened their mouths, they would definitely offend someone. They had not expected this beautiful girl to have such a bad past. It was fortunate that they had not been overwhelmed by her beauty. Otherwise, they would be like Master Jiu Ming of Paramount, who had given away his forces and ended up in a mass rebellion. In the end, the loss outweighed the gain. Looking around at these mocking gazes, Feng Ruqing squeezed Feng Tianyu and Nailin Yan's shoulders and pulled Feng Chun behind her. She then stepped forward and walked toward the crowd. Chapter 13:16. White Lotus Qin Feier, 3 Nailin Yin resisted the urge and stood in her place, no longer making any move. Feng Ruqing stopped in her tracks as her indifferent gaze fell on Qin Feier. She stared at her for a moment before she returned to her senses. Oh, you are Qin Feier who spied on my state preceptor and ended up taking drugs that caused your face to age? You look like you are older than my mother. I couldn't recognize you for a moment. Qin Feier's face changed drastically. She clenched her fists tightly, and even her breathing grew a little heavier. Zhong Fu was startled. His face darkened as he looked at Qin Feier. Besides Nan Xian, she has also bothered another man? I don't understand why Er is so in love with her. However, Zhong Fu did not say these words out loud. He just looked at Feng Ruqing coldly. And the man you were talking about, Feng Ruqing smiled. I did fall in love with my state preceptor and abandon that man. So what? My state preceptor is so handsome, gentle, and strong. There is no chance for you to snatch my state preceptor. You are so ugly, and my state preceptor once said that seeing you will affect his mood and appetite. Feng Tianyu was a bit depressed as the words my state preceptor kept coming out from Feng Ruqing. He always felt that the cabbage that his family had worked so hard and grew well was humped by a pig named Nancien. "You shut up, Zong," he shouted angrily. "As a woman from a noble family, don't you feel ashamed to talk like that? I see that you've even forgotten the reservedness that a woman should have." Well, Qin Feier is quite reserved. She has always wanted to sleep with my state preceptor, and the state preceptor is obviously disgusted with her. But she deadpanned and kept bothering him. Puff! Gui was the first to laugh. Her eyes were curved into crescent moons as she laughed out loud. Xiaoqing is right. Qin Feier is really the kind of woman who will take advantage of anyone who has a strong background. She did it to Luo Li and also Xiaoqing's man. Me for extra chapters. Qin Feier's face grew paler and paler. Her body trembled as she stood alone in the middle of the crowd. Gui did not restrain herself and continued her sarcasm. "Do you still remember how you treated Luo Li back then? She was clearly the one who was bullied, and you were always pretending to be a good person, urging her to be patient and give up everything. Mu Huan liked a relic that was left by Luo Li's mother, but you have forced Luo Li to give it to Mu Huan. You always make yours the winning side. Everyone likes you. You make them think that you have a pure heart and that Luo Li is petty, but the truth. Just because the person you like has fallen in love with Xiaoqing, you go around slandering her. What about all the things you once said to Luo Li? Put it on you, and it becomes someone else's fault. Qin Feier, you're so shameless. Now you want to put all the blame on Xiaoqing. Xiaoqing approached the wrong person back then. The man she married was a scumbag who treated her with the utmost humiliation and left her alone in an empty room. Why should she spend her life with that scum? Feng Ruqing was silent. Please don't mention about being alone in an empty room again. Do you think I don't care about my pride when I'm in the Divine Herbs sect? Gui raised her head proudly. You have always thought that the bastard is following her because he is attracted to Xiaoqing's beauty. Let me tell you, although I hate that bastard, but he's not scum. When he and Xiaoqing fell in love, Xiaoqing was a 250-pound fat woman. Chapter 1317. White Lotus. Qin Feier, for Feng Ruqing, was speechless. Do you need to nag Qin Feier like she is your daughter? Can't we just ignore her? And it seems that you're enjoying calling my state preceptor a bastard when he's not around. Gui was so happy to call Nancien a bastard in public. Suddenly, a cool breath made her hair stand on her back. She turned around and saw Feng Ruqing staring hard at her. Oh no, Xiaoqing is angry. Was it because she had called him bastard? But Nancien was really a bastard and her rival. Qin Feier was too angry to say a word. Zhong Yi's face also darkened as he stared at Gu Yi angrily. The entire hall was so quiet that the sound of the wind could be heard. Those people looked at Qin Feier in mock shock. They had believed Qin Feier's words just now because Qin Feier was Zhong Fu's adoptive daughter, and she could not have made any false statements. And it was the same for Gu Yi. Gu Yi was Gu Shi's daughter, and with her status, she would not lie in public. Therefore, compared to Feng Ruqing, this woman Qin Feier must be even worse. Gu Yi. Zhong Yi viciously gritted her teeth. Don't talk nonsense here. Feier is not that kind of person. She is innocent and naive. But that woman, he angrily pointed at Feng Ruqing. She's the one who has drugged Feier and caused her to age. She's the one who's jealous of Feier. Gu Yi sneered. Jealous of Qin Feier? What does Qin Feier have for Xiaoqing to be jealous of? Her looks or her background? Or her courage in wanting to sleep with another man? Everyone was stunned, and some of them could not help but laugh out loud. Ridiculous. Jealous of Qin Feier? Her face was aging now, but her facial features did not change much from before. And even if she had not noticed such a change, her looks still could not compare to the young lady of Fengyan Manor. Otherwise, there would not have been so many people wanting to marry Feng Ruqing just now. Me for extra chapters. As for the family background, Qin Feier was a member of the Qin family of Tianshan Manor, and Feng Ruqing was the young lady of Fengyan Manor. Initially, with Tianshan Manor as a backing, Qin Feier was indeed from a powerful family. Unfortunately, Tianshan Manor did not support the Qin family, and the one that Tianshan Manor protected was Feng Ruqing. So, what was there in Qin Feier to be jealous of? Oh, and as for her courage to sleep with someone else's man, well, someone might be jealous. If that man was willing to sleep with her, that sort of thing was perfectly natural and nothing to be jealous of. But since the man had rejected her and she still persistently wanted to sleep with him, such courage was indeed admirable. Not to mention Feng Ruqing, even these people were a little jealous. Get out! All of you get out! Zong, he was as furious as a lion. His eyes were red. As long as I'm here, don't you try to bully her. Get out! Zong Yi. Zong Fu's face changed slightly. It was fine to kick out Fengyan Manor, but Tianshan Manor. After all, Tianshan Manor was one of the three major forces. He wanted to defeat Tianshan Manor in everything, but to kick Tianshan Manor out from this assembly. It was unacceptable. Gu Shi would feel embarrassed, and with his character, he would definitely do something in retaliation. This would cause a cold war between the two forces. If they started to fight, Deity's Gate would only sit back and reap the benefits from the war. Chapter 13:18. Nailin Yin? That's a familiar name. Izong, he did not care so much as he only knew that his beloved woman was bullied. He would not allow these people who had bullied Feier to set their feet on his territory. Father, this is our divine herb sect. Why should we let these people run amok here? They didn't respect our divine herb sect, so why should we care about their pride? Remove them immediately. Zong Fu's face darkened. He looked at Zong Yi, but in the end, he did not continue to stop him. However, his gaze toward Gu Shi was not as fierce as it was before. Gu Shi, we have been friends for many years. You wouldn't be an enemy of my divine herb sect just for Fengyan Manor, would you? Gu Shi laughed. So what if it's the divine herb sect? I am a man with a clear conscience. I don't care if you're the divine herb sect or ghost herb sect. It'll defend anyone that I want to protect today. Feng Ruqing did not utter a single word from beginning to end. A faint smile appeared on her beautiful face. Xiaoming was also indifferent. He stood beside Feng Ruqing and smiled evilly. Since someone had stood up to defend this little girl, then he would not interfere. But if Gu Shi could not settle this thing, he would protect this girl till the end. But it seemed like this girl had become so strong that she no longer needed protection from others. Suddenly, the scene of their first encounter came up in Xiaoming's mind. At that time, Feng Ruqing was still a big fatty, and she was so weak. But in just 3 years, she had already grown to such an extent. Gu Shi. Zong Fu did not expect Gu Shi to protect Feng Ruqing at such a time. He was so furious as he had already given Gu Shi a chance to step down, but Gu Shi was so stubborn. So, don't blame me for embarrassing you here. Zong Fu looked at the people of Deity's Gate on the sidelines. If he wanted to make a move against Tianshan Manor, he must pull the people from Deity's Gate to his side, so that Deity's Gate would not only sit back and reap the benefits from their conflict. Me for extra chapters. Gu Shi remained calm. He did not feel threatened by Zong Fu's words. It was as if in his eyes, Zong Fu, who was standing in front of him, was only a joke. Jiu stood up and smiled coldly. It seems that Tianshan Manor is going to fight us to defend a little girl. Could it be that you're also bewitched by this girl and want to find a stepmother for your daughter? With his words, he had not only humiliated Feng Ruqing, but also Gu Shi. Gu Shi's wife died a long time ago, and he had not married again since then. Besides her daughter, he had never had any contact with other women, so now that he was defending Feng Ruqing to this extent, did it mean to find a stepmother for Gu Yi? Master Gu. Before Gu Shi could continue speaking, Nailin Yin waved her sleeves, smiled, and stepped forward. This matter is related to our Fengyan Manor. I don't want to bother Master Gu. Gu Shi smiled calmly. My daughter likes little Xiao Qing, and I've treated little Xiao Qing as my daughter. I don't feel this to be troublesome. Gu Shi emphasized that he was protecting Feng Ruqing only because Gu Yi liked her. It had also indirectly proved that Feng Ruqing was innocent. Jiu became more and more embarrassed. It seems like Gu Shi is confused. Even at a time like this, he still wants to defend that girl. Chapter 1319, Nailin Yin? That's a familiar name too. Gusher was just like that idiot, Jiu Ming. Tianshan Manor would be destroyed by Gusher sooner or later. Today, I want an answer from Gusher whether you choose Fengyan Manor or Deity's Gate and the Divine Herb sect. Jiu Yu stood up. His voice was so loud that it shook the entire hall. The crowd was startled. Two major forces were forcing Tianshan Manor to make a choice. If Tianshan Manor chose Fengyan Manor, Gusher would be an enemy of the two major forces, and he might not be able to live well in the future. Initially, Tianshan Manor was already suffering from serious internal affairs, and now there was a threat from outside. If this continued, Tianshan Manor was not far from destruction. However, the crowd did not dare to speak up in this situation. They only stood in the corner, shivering. They were afraid of accidentally offending any of the masters. Among the three major forces, Tianshan Manor was the only one that they looked down on the most. Gusher doesn't need to give you an answer. Feng Tianyu's voice was slightly deep. Because Master Gus' answer is irrelevant here. Fengyan Manor is not interested in staying in this place. But you have insulted my daughter, so you have to pay for it. Suddenly, a fierce storm emerged, and the entire hall was filled with a violent wind. Feng Tianyu and Nailin Yin stood beneath the storm. Their energy was colder and harsher than the storm. Little Qing, Jiuming smiled evilly and said, "Aren't you going to help?" "No need," Feng Ruqing smiled. "I also want to know how powerful my father and mother are now." Nailin Yin was naturally strong. She had remained powerful even after the many years of confinement. Recently, Feng Tianyu had received an inheritance, causing his strength to advance by leaps and bounds. Since they were able to come forward now, it proved that their strength was not what it used to be. Of course, Feng Ruqing also believed that even if they did not have the kind of powerful strength they had today, they would definitely stand up to defend her. But their confidence had convinced Feng Ruqing that they were powerful enough to fight with them. Boom! The storm surged up violently and filled the entire hall. All the chairs flew up in the sky, instantly crashing into the people of the Divine Herb sect. Everyone in the assembly hall was stunned. Today's war was inevitable, but what they had not expected was that the one who would make the first move would be Fengyan Manor. Me for extra chapters. Fengyan Manor really has the nerve to attack the Divine Herb sect. Do you think that you're invincible and that no one can match you? No matter how fast new forces developed, it was just a startup, like a new talent. No matter how strong he was, how could he compare himself to an old master who had lived for 100 years? What if? If Fengyan Manor could swallow their anger, they could turn over a new leaf in the future. Unfortunately, the people of Fengyan Manor were still too reckless after all. Everyone shook their heads disapprovingly as they thought about a rising force about to fall into history. It was a pity, and everyone was a little heartbroken, faced with everyone's disappointment. Zhong Fu's unconcerned expression was suddenly filled with a hint of caution as he sensed the powerful energy coming from Feng Tianyu and Nailin Yin. Boom! The storm that carried monstrous forces was headed toward Zhong Fu. His face sank a little as he hurriedly blocked it with his sleeves. A loud bang echoed, and he was pushed backward. The storm had disappeared at his block, as if it had never existed. The crowd laughed sarcastically. Chapter 1320, Nailin Yin? That's a familiar name. The crowd seemed to know what was coming. Fengyan Manor. How could it compare to the Divine Herb sect? Feng Tianyu. Did he have the ability to defeat them? However, no one noticed Zhong Fu's face, nor did they see his trembling arms. They only knew that Fengyan Manor had failed. Other than Gu Shi and that old master from Deity's Gate, no one could rival Zhong Fu. Father, what are you waiting for? Zhong Yi turned his head, feeling confused. Get rid of these people immediately. Zhong Fu was furious. You shut up. It was the first time he had ever snapped at Zhong Yi harshly, leaving Zhong Yi stunned, as if he still did not know why his father was so angry. Zhong Fu's entire body was shaking. This man, who was known in the world as someone who relied on women, was actually stronger than him. This is impossible. Impossible. He was just an old guy who was relying on Fengyun Manor Master, a man with no power of his own. Indeed, everyone in the world said that Fengyun Manor Master's husband was nothing more than an old guy who had no power and relied on his wife. No one knew how he had won the heart of Fengyun Manor Master and had her bear children for him. This was the first time Zhong Fu had fought against Feng Tianyu. All he knew was that Feng Tianyu was weaker than him. Initially, he had thought that he could defeat Gu Shi with Deity's Gate support, but who knew that Feng Tianyu would attack him first? Deity's Gate had Zhu Yu and his brother, and that old immortal Gu Shi had no one. Otherwise, he would not have been so passive. Zhong Fu's eyes narrowed. If Feng Tianyu and Gu Shi joined forces, did he have any chance of winning? And there was also Fengyun Manor Master, Nailin Yin. Feng Tianyu's strength is above Holy Warrior tier. What about Nailin Yin? Is she also a Holy Warrior? Wait a minute. Nailin Yin? Why is that name so familiar? It was like he had heard it somewhere and had forgotten it for a moment. He looked at Feng Tianyu, then turned to Nailin Yin, and his gaze finally met Gu Shi's face. This bastard must have been aware of the power of these people of Fengyun Manor. That's why he chooses to defend them. Zhong Fu never thought that Gu Shi was such a scheming dog. Manor Master Nailin, Maiden Feng, Zhong Fu smiled. It takes a fight for people to get to know each other well. When I fought with Master Feng just now, it suddenly made me appreciate you more, so why don't we sit down and have a drink until dawn? Me for extra chapters. The crowd was speechless. What's going on here? The fight between them just made them friends? Appreciate? And you're going to drink together until dawn. What about the fight? Tear each other apart. That's it? Nothing else? Not to mention the others. Even Feng Tianyu was stunned. Zhong Fu is out of his mind, right? It takes a fight for people to get to know each other well? The Divine Herb sect had bullied people and humiliated his daughter. Did Zhong Fu think that Feng Tianyu could easily let him go? Was Zhong Fu delusional? Father. He turned his head stiffly. He was a little puzzled, startled, and shocked. What do you mean? Zhong Fu ignored Zhong Yi this time. He smiled stiffly. As the saying goes, heroes respect heroes. Initially, I was upset with Fengyun Manor. If it wasn't for them, there wouldn't have been so many fights. But I am impressed with Master Feng in this battle. He is a hero, and I respect him. Chapter 1321. No one is allowed to bully her. This way of saying would not make him feel embarrassed in front of the crowd. He would settle this debt with these people later when he went to Deity's Gate and would be united with the old master. He was alone here without the old master. Zhu Yu and Zhu Yuan were useless. But he was also a great man who could be submissive. There was nothing wrong with it. Therefore, Zhong Fu did not feel that he was doing anything wrong. Zhong Yi was stunned, dumbfounded, looking at his own father, who looked as if he was looking at another person as if he never knew him. Father, you didn't take the wrong medicine today, did you? You respect Feng Tianyu? It's funny, right? Feng Tianyu is a weak man who relies on women. Has father lost his mind to say such things? Zhong Fu did not indulge in Zhong Yi this time and glared at him. You shut up. Can't you see that Master Feng is a warrior at a young age? What's wrong with me appreciating someone like him? Why are you talking so much? Young age? Zhong Yi was startled. Feng Tianyu's daughter has already grown up, but his father was still calling him young? What has happened to father? Zhong Fu had always been a man who knew what was good for him. Just like when he had wanted to defend Gu Jinyang, but was horrified by Nan Xian's strength. In the end, he had allowed Nan Xian to take Gu Jinyang away in front of him. He would not offend someone like Nan Xian just because of Gu Jinyang. It was no different now. Feng Tianyu was quite strong, and there was Nailin Yin whose strength was unknown. Oh, and Gu Shi who was supporting them. He was not so dumb to go against them, especially when it was for a Qin Feier. If she could not bring benefits to the Divine Herb sect and kept stirring up trouble, why would he keep her? To be his daughter-in-law? Me for extra chapters. Zhong Yi's body stiffened. This was the first time his father had done this to him in front of so many people. But he also understood that his father was furious this time. He was a little reluctant about his father's decision, but he did not open his mouth again. So, if a naughty child did not listen, just scold him once before beating him. To a spoiled child like Zhong Yi, after he knew that Zhong Fu was angry, he did not dare say much. He could only hold his sulking breath and stare hard at Feng Ruqing. Perhaps even Qin Feier had not expected that this would happen. Her face was pale, and her body began to tremble lightly. Her already weak face looked even more like she would faint at any moment. After seeing Qin Feier in such a condition, Zhong Yi was even more distressed. He was angry, but did not dare to say anything more. Feng Tianyu stared hard at Zhong Fu and smiled coldly. You have humiliated my daughter. Are we just going to let this go? Zhong Fu laughed. Feier is still young and ignorant, and the former Qin family did not teach her well. Now she has become my adoptive daughter, so I will naturally teach her well later. Since we are becoming friends, why should Master Feng have a problem with my daughter? Even though he did not treat Qin Feier as his daughter, but he still had to defend her. Otherwise, if people knew that Fengyan Manor had bullied his adoptive daughter in public in the future, his divine herb sect would no longer be respected in the reclusive world. He must save his reputation. I don't care whose daughter Qin Feier is, all I care about is my daughter. She bullied my daughter, and you still want me to let her go. Zhong Fu, do you think that's possible? Chapter 1322. No one is allowed to bully. Her Tu Zhong Fu's face suddenly darkened. He did not expect that Feng Tianyu was still unable to forgive him even after he had taken a step back. Zhong Fu held back his anger and did not unleash his fury as he saw Gu Shi staring at him. There are so many of you. I'm scared of you. The crowd thought that Zhong Fu would not continue to endure his anger this time, but they could only see him groaning in frustration. Master Feng, take a step back. Why bother with a little girl? What I mean is, aren't you afraid of losing your pride if you, a big man, fight with a little girl? Father, a warm voice came from behind Feng Tianyu. Feng Tianyu turned around and looked at Feng Ruqing, who was already walking toward him. The young girl smiled faintly, but her eyes contained an unreadable light. There was already a deep hatred between me and Qin Feier. So, they'll handle things here. Feng Tianyu frowned, somewhat disagreeing with Feng Ruqing's words. It's not just you who has a deep hatred for Qin Feier. It's our family. It's a blood feud. Blood feud. If there were no real deep hatred, one would never use this word to describe it. That was why all eyes were immediately on Qin Feier. Isn't Qin Feier the adoptive daughter of the sect master? What blood feud does she have with Fengyan Manor? Maybe there's some misunderstanding? Qin Feier looked soft and weak. A woman like her can only do the kind of sleep with another man, as Maiden Gui said. She couldn't do anything else. If there has been any real misunderstanding, just make it clear. They can't be so rude at the assembly, and they should respect the divine herb sect. Zhong Fu was a nobleman, and there was nothing wrong with him cherishing a hero. After all, Feng Tianyu dared to face a behemoth like the divine herb sect for his daughter. Me for extra chapters. However, it was not right for a hero like Feng Tianyu to be so unforgiving. If they were in Zhong Fu's position, they might do the same thing too. Misunderstanding? Zhong Yi sneered and turned to Feng Ruqing. All of this is because of this man from Fengyan Manor. Zhong Yi's gaze, filled with hatred and disgust, turned back to Qin Shun. This man is the Qin family's adoptive son. He almost died out there, but the Qin family has adopted him, given him a good life, but he still treats his savior with such vengeance. Now, you are ridiculously talking about blood feud. He spoke too fast, so fast that Zhong Fu could not even stop him. Feng Ruqing picked up a brick from the ground, weighed its weight, and slammed it on top of Zhong Yi's head with a loud thud. The whole world suddenly disappeared before his eyes before he could finish his words. Feng Ruqing patted her hands as she smiled and turned to unconscious Zhong Yi. What else do you want to say? I'm giving you a chance now, and you can say whatever you want to say. The crowd was speechless. Zhong Yi has already fainted. What do you want him to say? Ear. Zhong Fu was stunned for a few seconds before rushing toward Zhong Yi as quickly as possible. He picked up Zhong Yi's body and stared at the blood flowing down from the man's head. His eyes gradually turned red. Chapter 1323. No one is allowed to bully her. 3. He raised his eyes and stared hard at Feng Ruqing. How dare you? He had already retreated again and again, and this person was still attacking his son. It was his son, his only son. He could yell at him and be mean to him, but he could not bear to beat his son. And now an outsider had smashed his son's head. How could he not be angry? Zhong Fu clenched his fists tightly, his veins pulsing in his forehead, and his eyes were filled with rage. No matter how weak his son was, Zhong Yi was still his backbone, and he would not allow anyone to bully him. Feng Ruqing ignored Zhong Fu. She sneered as she looked down at Zhong Yi, who was unconscious. Just now, you said that Chainer was saved by the Qin families? No one answered her words. Zhong Yi was already unconscious. It was impossible for him to answer. Feng Ruqing continued, and you're calling Chainer an ungrateful kid? And you think he has let down Qin Feier? The entire hall was still as quiet as ever. So quiet that the sound of the wind blowing could be heard clearly. Zhong Fu trembled even more. His eyes were bloodshot, and his expression turned stern. Feng Ruqing smiled and said, everyone in Tian Shin Manor knows that Chainer is my brother. It was the Qin family who has taken him away. They forced Chainer to take some medicine since he was still a child and has used his blood as a drug primer for so many years. He was just a blood donor, a drug primer to the Qin family. Are you saying that Chainer is ungrateful? Ridiculous. My brother was stolen from us since he was a child and has been separated from our family for years. So, who is the ungrateful one when the one he saved is the one who tried to hurt him? Who's the real ungrateful person here? The whole world quieted down a little. Even the sound of the wind disappeared instantly. Only her voice was left, echoing in the sky for a long time. Feng Chen's clear eyes were staring at Feng Ruqing, and he had a smile on his face. He understood that Xiao Qing had deliberately said these words in front of the people. Me for extra chapters. It was to clear his name. She did not want him to spend his life being blamed for a crime that he had never committed. Even though he did not care about anything, her defense of him, it was like a light that illuminated his heart and led him to find his way home. It was wonderful. He was so lucky to have a chance to be with her. He was content enough and would not demand anything more. Feng Ruqing slowly walked toward Zhong Yi. Zhong Fu stood up suddenly. His face was cold and stern as he looked at Feng Ruqing. Little girl, do you know that there is a price to be paid for hurting my son in my divine herb sect? You'll never be able to leave here if you take one more step forward. Gusher frowned and stood up from his seat. He smiled coldly as he looked at Zhong Fu and gave him a warning look. Feng Tianyu and Nailin Yin took a few steps forward as a terrifying aura surged out from their bodies. Zhou Ming did not make any movements, but an evil cold light flashed in his eyes as he looked at Zhong Fu, and his gaze was filled with murderous intent. Zhong Fu did not move. He clenched his fists tightly as his bloodshot eyes stared coldly at Feng Ruqing. Feng Ruqing stopped in her tracks when she was in front of Zhong Fu. Her hand, which she placed behind her back, somehow found a stone and flicked it instantly at Zhong Yi's body before it bounced off his body. Her action was too fast for anyone to react. Chapter 1324. Kindly help him to wake up. Ah! A heart-wrenching scream suddenly rang out, echoed in the sky, and made everyone's heart tremble. That intense pain directly caused Zhong Yi to wake up from his unconsciousness. His face darkened, and he looked to be in some sort of discomfort. Zhong Fu was so furious. Feng Ruqing, what exactly are you doing? Nothing. He passed out, so I was just being nice trying to wake up. Feng Ruching shrugged nonchalantly. Once she soon turned to Qin Feier and stared at her coldly. Qin Feier clenched her fists tightly as her breathing grew a little heavier. But she forced herself to look strong, seemingly unwilling to show her weakness in front of Feng Ruching. "Guards!" Zhong Fu took a deep breath. His face was cold as he said, "Take ear to rest first. I have some things to deal with here." The Divine Herb's sect's disciples had already stepped forward, yet before they could even touch Zhong Yi, he pushed them away angrily. "Get out! All of you, get out!" He clenched his fists as his face was livid with anger. "Feng Ruching, you damned bitch, I won't let you go." Nailin Yan's demon-like figure fiercely flashed over and slapped Zhong Yi across his face. She slapped Zhong Yi in front of Zhong Fu. She did not even respect the sect master. The people of Fengyan Manor have gone overboard. Zhong Fu's aura suddenly surged out, causing the sky to darken a bit. Gusher stood up. His face was indifferent as he gazed at the crowd of the Divine Herb's sect with an obscure light in his eyes. Seeing Gusher's movement, the people of Deity's Gate also got up and walked a few steps toward Zhong Fu. All the forces other than these three major forces, as if they had discussed it, took a few steps back, giving a huge space to these three main forces. 1 for extra chapters. After all, the battle between holy warriors was not something that ordinary people could participate in, and if they did, they would at most become cannon fodder and die in this war. The atmosphere in the Divine Herb sect assembly was so cold. "So?" Gu Shi sneered. "Do you really want to start a fight?" Zhong Fu's fists were clenched in rage as a vein bulged in his forehead. "It's Fengyan Manor who is bullying people. Master Gu, if you try to stop me, then you will become the enemy of our Divine Herb sect." Gu Shi waved his sleeve calmly. "Don't blame me for not warning you. You can't win this battle. In the end, you will lose your son and the entire Divine Herb sect." "Huh?" Zhong Fu laughed sardonically. "Do you think you can easily bully my Divine Herb sect just because you have a large number of holy warriors on your side? I'm telling you, whoever beats my son is like they are beating me. There's no way I'm not going to fight back." As soon as he finished speaking, Zhong Fu had turned and rushed toward Feng Ruching. His gaze was stern and filled with monstrous murderous intent. Gusher smiled lightly and shook his head. He had already persuaded him, but Zhong Fu, he was asking for it, and there was no one to blame. However, before Feng Ruching could make a move, Feng Tianyu was already standing in front of her. He raised his hand to hold Zhong Fu's fist. Boom! A force that was as powerful as the waves of the sea was unleashed with a loud bang. The entire ground shook from it, and the trees were uprooted and sent flying in the air. One that you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.